What's up, everybody? I'm back in the car, and it's cold outside. So we are approaching the time to see Wolf Space Man. And, it is Wolf Man, not the Wolf Man. There's difference in the way you put the words together and everything. Brian and I are going. Brian from Gravely Amusing. And if anyone does not know, I am a big fan of the original Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman. Not just the film, but the whole legacy of that character. The Wolfman meets Frankenstein. House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula are okay. Now, Lon Chaney / Larry Talbot's story, good. Okay. And then we get into Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, which was one that I watched a lot, okay, as a child. I had the original Wolfman and I had Abbott and Costello. So I watched those two a lot. And one thing I took away from Abbott and Costello was the idea of how Larry, through his immortality as the Wolfman, is trying to fight evil, stop Dracula, and you really see more of that he's a good man. Now, I know that there are certain elements of the original Wolfman that doesn't hold up for modern audiences, as far as just his way of dealing with Gwen and all that, and I think it's subtextual, and, it was the 1940s, and things weren't always explored the way that they could be, but I still see that Larry Talbot is a good man who has a curse put upon him. And I think that's going to carry into the new film. Now, the other thing about the Wolfman is there's a lore with it. There's certain beats that go with it. There's the mystical, almost folklore, well, not almost folklore, element of, Maleva, the Romani. I'm not going to say gypsy, even though it's gypsy, we know it's kind of a bad term, but the Romani. We have the poem, that goes into it. And there are elements that I really like in the 2010s Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. First of all, I like that it's set in the 1800s. I love the look. I think that is probably the greatest werewolf look ever captured on film. I feel that some things that movie could have done better, I've explored in other podcasts. The cane didn't play as much of a role in that film as it should have, even though I do have a replica of that cane. And the silver element, the pentagram element, was not present in that version. And nobody but the opening scene by the gypsy speaks the poem. Okay? So all these are elements that go into the Larry Talbot story. Now, like I said, I like all those folklore elements. I've read the original Wolfman script, where maybe it was supposed to be more psychological than him actually being a werewolf, but the premise being that Lawrence Talbot wasn't the son of Sir John. He was an American coming to this small European village. They say it's in Wales, but it's never actually addressed. That's very heavy on this werewolf folklore and belief system. That's why everybody knows the poem and all that. The third version of the Talbot story would be Ethan Lawrence Talbot, which was featured on Penny Dreadful with Josh Hartnett as a Wolfman. Great look. Didn't use him enough. And they changed some things. We really didn't get the poem or the cane, but they changed the Romani to being Native American and made him they stuck with Lawrence being an American and set it in the New Mexico territory, making it much more of a Western, which was fine. But I still feel that the heart of the story about a good man cursed is there. And you have the idea that he comes from a higher class family that's been struck by tragedy. So there are elements. Now, going into the Lee Wannell, or Wannell, however you pronounce his last name, film, things that I'm worried about. One, he's not Larry Talbot in any shape or form. I fear it'll be too small of a movie, seeming that there's only the three main characters. The look and design, from what I've seen, does not look great. I mean, I'm worried about it actually looking more like just Weird Man than Wolfman. Now, there is a big difference between the Jack Pierce classic Wolfman and the Rick Baker 2010 Wolfman. I love the 2010 Wolfman look. I do. I love the Ethan Talbot look as well. Though, side note, my biggest complaint is it should have been Lawrence Ethan Talbot instead of Ethan Lawrence Talbot. But I'm going in hesitant. I think the good man corrupt is there, but I do like the other elements of either the Romani or the Native American. The outsider that was kind of brought back home, that's kind of gets corrupted by a curse, that struggle. Larry's not tied to a family, as in like a female, but in this new film, the protagonist has a wife and child. So there are things that are different, but I don't think we're going to have as much of the fun folklore, like with the cane, the silver, the pentagram. The pentagram I liked when I read that the original script was written so that the victims were marked by a star. It was referencing what it felt like to be a Jew hunted in Germany because Kurt Siodmak escaped Germany. And that made me appreciate that element that he added to the story. But I love the idea of the silver cane, the moon. The moon is such an element, in the poem and the original film. See, what's crazy is in the original Wolfman, we never get a shot of the moon. And the poem says, even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolf's bane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Doesn't state the full moon or anything like that. The autumn part I always found humorous, because does that just mean like 2 times out of the year, or does the moon just have to be bright during the autumn and he turns every day because the moon is bright? There's things in the time in that first film. Now, you jump to the 2010 film, they use the same poem, which sucks, but Kurt Siodmak also wrote The Wolfman Meets Frankenstein. And in that film, he changes it to when the moon is full and bright. And technically, that's the one I prefer. And that's the one that should be used if we're going to do the poem. And werewolf folklore is far here and there. Like, you have, Brian and I have talked about this, you have werewolves, you have lichens in films and literature type thing, and then you have wolfmen. And the wolfman is much where we're at, with where it's more manly but a wolf at the same time. There are elements of the wolf there. the lichens are the much huge, big, um, hulking, like in Underworld style, and then werewolves are a little bit more wolf-like. Sometimes, a quadruped, on all fours. So I'm going in open-minded to this movie. I just wanted more of the folklore, and if you get a chance to look up Penny Dreadful, he's much more man, wolf, and I like it. So I'm going in open-minded. The Wolfman is, my favorite monster because it's a man who's cursed and tortured, and getting the look is so much of the what needs to happen. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, a great version of a Wolfman is Michael J. Fox as Teen Wolf. Even Teen Wolf, the series, I like the way they did the wolves, more Wolfmanish. And same thing with my favorite comedy, Big Wolf on Campus. So we will see how Lee Wannell's Wolfman. And also note is the look of Jack Nicholson in Wolf. And we'll go from there and see what's up. I'll hit you back with a continuation of this recording after I see the film, and then you'll hear me on Gravely Amusing for a big review with Brian and Jania. I'm going into this film optimistic, as always. Okay, better to have high hopes than no hopes. Now, a full breakdown discussion will occur shortly later in the week, as I will be a guest on Gravely Amusing and discuss things alongside my pal Brian Peters. Some things I do want to just kind of bring out as a lover of folklore who's read and studied folklore. There's so much beautiful folklore and culture, and it's an amazing thing. And with werewolves are very interesting because of the Hollywood, what Hollywood's done with them. So let's just real quickly, I'm going to use three terms for lack of a better term, just to kind of help differentiate. Well, I'll even bring up a fourth term: skinwalkers. Skinwalkers are more of people who would don like an animal pelt that would turn them into the animal, like the wolf or whatever. And one of the very early werewolf stories involved more of a skinwalker. It was about a father and a son, and their names evade me right now. I apologize, my brain's running slow after work. And then we have, we'll say, werewolf, lycans, and wolfman. Okay, and these are three terms that get thrown around interchangeably, but there can be significant differences. And they're just more of a stylistic depiction, even though they're still very much just interchangeable. But let's talk about them a little bit, okay? A werewolf can range from being very wolf-like. It can be the pure wolf, where it's or some form of an actual wolf. Maybe they're bigger in size. Maybe they're the size of a regular wolf. We do see them sometimes bigger. Um, this has an array of just your generic, what we're used to seeing in movies and everything, depiction of wolves. Okay, it kind of is a all-encompassing term. The werewolf, usually for principles of folklore, will be unable to control themselves when they turn, are forced to turn by the full moon. They don't have a choice. Very more animalistic. The Underworld series did a good job. If you watch Rise of the Lycans, showing what the lichen looks like compared to the regular werewolf. The more elongated snout is a big one, but their size can vary. Usually they're more quadruped, on all fours, and um, this is one thing why in the film Van Helsing, that whole thing, that is definitely a werewolf. even though they call him the Wolfman. Not very happy with the wolf depiction in that film, with the way that they transform. And I'm not a fan of the idea that the wolf triggers a transformation by direct moonlight. Recently, Brian and I watched the film Werewolves, that was released in 2023, and part of their concept was you had to be exposed directly to the moonlight to transform. I think it's more of, there's more to it than that. I think seeing the moon and everything triggers that. A version of this too, also Harry Potter 3, Prisoner of Azkaban. Even though sometimes we do see this depiction of the wolf on two legs, and in folklore it has been two legs, like I said, it can vary. Now, the lichen from lycanthropy, lycanthrope, lunar, uh, all dealing with the moon, more commonly in stories is a werewolf that has more of their mental faculties, uh, is more is on two legs most of the time. It has a shorter snout, muscular, it's bigger, it has more man characteristics, but it can control and can change more at will. Now, this is a big difference. It is affected by the moon, and that's when it's like at its worst or its height. And we see this, I would say, in the Teen Wolf TV series. They're more lichens than just straight werewolves, even though they interchangeable, because they have, more of control and different phases of their transformation. Of course, this is a term used popular in the Underworld series, and we see, like I said, the differentiations there. Uh, and, you know, it's tricky because um, it is definitely something that I would say they have more control, in the depiction of their werewolfism can vary. Um, Now, the Wolfman is definitely the big thing here. Is this is where we kind of more reside in the realm of maybe they can change at will, maybe they can't. This is, but it's definitely more man. There's more man to a wolf. Okay, so of course we have the original Wolfman, and I think that really breaks down and gives you the idea. In that story, I've always looked at it as Bela was born a werewolf. And in their lore, if you're bitten, you become a werewolf, but you become more of the wolf man. Okay? In some folklore tales, you can be born a werewolf. And some, you're bitten, you get cursed, you become, if you're bitten, you survive, you become one. And I think the Wolfman shows that. Of course, this is always Hollywood and, changing lore and what they want for visualization. So it's, like I said, we have playability, but if you're using the term Wolfman, I think you definitely have to have more manly characteristics. And some of it is even the idea that the creature still has clothes that makes him that man. We see this in the Benicio del Toro version, which I think is one of the best looking Wolfman werewolf makeups ever. Um, the Jack Nicholson wolf could be considered like a Wolfman, and traits of the Wolfman can segue between that of werewolf and lichen. But I think one of the big one is remaining mostly on two legs. You can be on four legs for a little bit, but mainly on the two legs, having more man characteristics, much like the Ethan version from Penny Dreadful. Uh, let's see. I always joke I love Big Wolf on campus. Is this like campy fun? He's a Wolfman lichen looking thing. Teen Wolf of Michael J. Fox. He's kind of a Wolfman lichen because he keeps more of his man human form. And that's an impressive makeup still after all these years, okay? Let's be honest. Another version is the Curse of the Werewolf, the Hammer version. That is definitely a Wolfman liking. But like I said, the Wolfman is like a subset of the lichen, meaning of the werewolf. It's kind of this hybrid, but it has the more upright man, two legs, wearing clothes. And I think that's part of the psychology of the character as well. Um, and I mean, I'd even venture to say that the Wolfman you never really see has a tail. So, good thoughts there, right? Another Wolfman is Monster Squad. He still kept clothes. But these are kind of subsets of the werewolf. The werewolf is a very interesting folklore character about where you go. So, and I think the new film being called Wolf Man will have more man in there than wolf. But we will see. We will see what it delivers. I'm trying to avoid spoilers going in, and I'm driving to the theater, and I'm just thinking about my folklore as I've done a lot of reading over time. But I'm gonna add this to the review. We'll catch you later. I'm gonna grab my popcorn and we're going in. The last thing I'm gonna add real quick is the combination of the words Wolfman was not popularized till the 41 film, The Wolfman, and it was a different approach to werewolf instead of calling it like Werewolf of London or Werewolf, whether it was a different way of monarchy or moniker or just trademark, licensing, having your own kind of title. So it was a difference. And, we've talked about a little bit about Lawrence Talbot and how there's a certain set of rules and story beats to the Wolf Man as it is its own entity, more so than just a generic werewolf story. And, this film is called Wolf Space Man. So it's not the Wolf Man, it's Wolf Man. And there's a difference in the, as a definitive declarative, and having the space. And we talk about this often when we talk about Superman and Superman and how, even Super Dash Man, and you see it a lot with Batman and Spider Man as well, like the Batman. We've not had the Spider Man yet, thankfully. So there is something to that. But let's get in this. Here's a quick thought before I dive into more. But I've been reassessing the first Wolfman movie and how much of the mythos is actually built by the first two Wolfman movies, right? But in the first film, she says, silver, a bullet, silver, handle. And there's the idea that it has to be like someone you love, right? Supposed to be able to release you from your curse. And it's Sir John who beats Larry with the silver cane that supposedly, supposed to kill him with the silver, right? My thought is it could be red, but why that it doesn't kill Larry, just kind of puts him in more of a comatose, is looking at the evidence of the relationship between Sir John and Larry, that Sir John never really loved his son. The kind of love that it would take to end the curse like that. And, we talked about before in the original script, Larry was not supposed to be Sir John's son. He was an American tourist, or not tourist, but an American sent there to, as a, work for Sir John. So yeah, just a thought is that, you know, in the 2010 version, they talk about the curse having to be lifted or whatever for someone that loves Larry. And one of my biggest issues with that film is I would have loved the story a little bit better if Gwen had been Larry's girlfriend, or shall we say, not girlfriend, but childhood love childhood acquaintance, and she was friends with both brothers. And then when Larry left, she eventually fell in love with Ben. But Larry coming back rekindles the interest that they once had with each other, and that there was this grounds for love and attention way back before they were these adults. And it's brought up again that she, someone who loves you can end the curse. And ending the curse, I like the idea that it's the death. There's the tragedy, that he can't no longer be human. I mean, yeah, there's ways you could. He turns back human and then, gets killed by the detective, or, goes to prison. That's meh, meh, meh. The idea that he is the wolf, the monster, as the other side of him that continues is powerful. Okay, I am out of the theater and I got thoughts. Um, there are small movies, indie movies, and then too small of a movie. And this is like a 5-actor play. Um, I went in with low expectations, and Jania said, "I don't think you're going to like it." And I was like, "I don't know. I'm going in and I'm going to look at it as one, does it work as a wolf band movie? 2, does it work as a good movie? 3, does it work as a good werewolf movie?" And I come out of it and I say it failed on all 3. Um, it attempted at heart, and at times it was good. The lead actor, Christopher Abbott, not familiar with him. I felt like at times he was trying to hide having an accent. The actress was terrible. Mom jeans, high waisted, horrible, distracting. She was not a strong character, and so much of the film is quiet, and not in a good way, but just you have 3 actors, and they're not communicating, even when scenes when they should be. I mean, oh my gosh. Um, Spoilers out the wazoo. Okay. Um, it was funny is the first werewolf, like we said, we thought there would be 2, and he ended up looking better than our main werewolf. And they're not even werewolves. Like, that's what's okay. So we get no title card in this movie. Okay. Um, we get text at the start about in 1995 a hiker went missing, and everyone thought he was missing, and then he got a disease that they had called the face of the wolf. Okay, so it's a disease. You could have not given us that, and then just had this mysterious thing in the woods, and he gets bit or scratched or whatever, and it still plays into a little bit more traditional werewolf folklore. I mean, it's just like a virus that is fast acting, and I mean, the movie takes time compression weird. There's a shot where it's pitch dark, and they run in some to a treehouse, and then all of a sudden the sun is coming up. There's a shot where there's sunlight, and there's like, "Oh, your house. The house is just up ahead." You know what happens when it gets dark, and then it is dark in the next shot of them driving. Like there is no time to change. And from Universal and Blumhouse and everyone involved, this does not feel like a production that had money. Like I feel like they just shot this cheap and small. And I know like that's their thing, but I mean, gosh, I've seen Blumhouse movies, and this was I don't even know. Like I appreciate the father-daughter relationship and the kind of discourse they're trying to sell between the husband and wife, but I'm not buying it because you're shortchanging and truncating every emotional beat. If you would have taken so much of this film and compressed it to being the 3rd act, I would have loved it more because it would have been
more intense, but you kept elongating it. And his changing felt more like a zombie type movie than, the wolfman. And just, it's irritating. I wanted to like it. I wanted it to be something. And there's no folklore. There's nothing like really werewolfism except that they're changing into something. And I think they say face of the wolf or something like once or twice. Um, and it just sucks. I mean, his final design is horrible. It's so much. It's man with some hair and some jacked up teeth. I mean, and I've watched low budget werewolf stuff. Okay, Teen Wolf, the TV show has better looking wolves. Okay, at least make it look more like a wolf. Um, make me feel more tension. Like as he, I mean, all of a sudden he goes from getting sick to like leaps and bounds, and then all of a sudden he just can't talk anymore and nothing. And there's just the mom is horrible, not communicating with her husband at all. There's no dialogue, and everything takes place in one night. And I'm not going to sit here and rewrite the script like I wanted to and say, um, and I was thinking about like, okay, if you would have done this, you would have done this, this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not. Um, I like what he was trying to do with the family, but I mean, you could have still kept it. The dad's been missing, or they finally officially declared my dad dead. I need to go back, collect things, and then he goes back and he meets, people in the town, and we have a little bit more of interaction before they get to the farmhouse, and we see the family like away from the city that draws the mom and her work, and how the family's starting to reconnect, and all these types of scenes are in there, but they're all super short, super small, and there's nobody else they're interacting with. There's like 5 actors in the whole thing, and when one of your actors doesn't talk, it's transforming, and your lead female is horrible, your movie is boring, and you've lost tension. And I only care about the daughter. And like as a father, and he kind of stole one of my lines that I do with my kids. I will literally say, "What is daddy's job?" And both my kids know to respond to protect. And he kind of stole that from me. Um, but I needed more things to happen before he was at the point of no return of his communication, of his transformation. And when he transformed, I need more wolfism. Uh, he didn't need to go full Benicio del Toro amazement, but I needed more wolfism. Now, if I think back to how the modern of the Invisible Man was using technology and cameras, so their idea of a modern wolf man is a virus. And I mean, in coming out of COVID, like, do we really want to talk about viruses again? I mean, I know this is 2025, but this movie is supposed to come out in October of 2024. And I feel like they moved it to January because they knew it wasn't going to do well, and they kind of dumped it. Um, there's no fun in like what's fun with werewolf movies is you have the transformation, you have the folklore, you have it happens maybe more than one time, the build up. This is just a slow burn, and I think the actor looked good in that kind of dark and tragic way that we've seen with Lon Chaney Jr. and Benicio del Toro, and even Josh Hartnett. It's the eyes, but I didn't connect with him, even though I should be. Like they're trying to sell me on this bad father-son relationship, but is his dad just like was he in Nam or something? Like we don't really know what time it is, but they do have cell phones. His dad was in the Marines, and there's a lot of just left to be guessed about with that, and I think you could have done more work of building like how the character interacted and seeing more of the relationship between him and his daughter and how he would lash out at times. And it's all kind of in there, but it's just not well executed. And I hate saying that. Um, there's no fun to it about like the moon. Like, there's not even a shot of the moon. It's on the poster. So there's not even that common werewolf imagery that you could put in there and not have to directly tie it to what's going on. You could have had a full moon, but these, virus wolf people, um, we see one during the day. We never know what happens to that wolf. Let's see. They don't change back. And I think that's part of the sad part is like with the curse and the tragedy though as the werewolf is when you return to your person and you know it's going to happen again and you have remnants of what you've done. That's part of the curse. And I kind of feel that if we're going to make this a tragedy and we already, probably the daughter should have been the one that had to kill the dad while the dad was trying to kill the mom. Um, it tries to kind of bookend with the way that we had seen a shot earlier in the film with the tree stand, but I think because the film opens with a shot of what looks like a hornet killing its own young, and then the idea is at some point the dad became one of these wolf people, and it's like, why the hell didn't he move? Like, if this was something that's going on, there's like nobody else around, and then he's the one that attacks his son. So once again, we have father son werewolf, like the Del Toro film, and then our protagonist Blake, which is a horrible name. I'm sorry, so generic. Like, he could have still been like Ethan or Larry, or like we still could have kept certain tropes and made it instead of Blake. Um, his father turns him, and then he kills his father, trying to protect his child. And there could have been, this little bit of like a cycle of child killing parent. Um, with, like I said, I think it should have been the daughter because that's a tragic ending right there. Um, but I feel like if you want to revitalize these iconic creatures, like you're doing it on such a small scale that just doesn't feel good. I mean, it feels more like a zombie vampire than a wolf type movie, with the scale. I don't know. I'm not happy on any form with it, and I wanted to be like watching, as like a 3-person film. Like if they had gotten to the cabin and had become the 3-person as like the third act, I think it would have worked. But watching almost the entire film with just these 3 actors who don't have any chemistry together, other than the daughter's the MVP. Uh, she made the film, so props to her. I love werewolf films. I actually watched a cheesy Nickelodeon one with the kids that had a more twists and better looking stuff with the children that was more fun than what this came out to be. It's just one of those movies I'll if I watch it again, I'll be like, it could have still been something so much better in the parameters of which Winnell was trying to make this film. But you left out so much that makes a werewolf or even a wolfman film interesting, and you made it a bland person with a disease. And do we really want to watch movies about viruses changing people? I mean, like I said, it's been 5 years, but still, like, are we there again? Like, are we at that time? Um, because I don't know if we're really wanting to go back down that road.
But let me know your thoughts in the comments. And maybe I'm being too hard on the film, but like I said, I'm a huge lover of the Wolfman and everything, and you just kind of really let us down. Okay, it's the next morning. I'm still thinking about the movie. And I'll say the more I think about it, the more I'm still unhappy. I sat there last night when I got home, was telling Jania about it, and she said, I knew you wouldn't like it. And I said, I went in optimistic, and I told her the same things. She said, well, why didn't they just call the movie Face of the Wolf? And I was like, you know what? If they had called it that, would have went in with a whole different mindset and probably liked it better. Even though I just don't like, oh, this is a re-imaging of the classic. No, it's really not. Because you're stripping away everything that was in that story. If you had tweaked it to be the story and still tried to do the beats that you did, it could have worked. Like, it could have been Larry Talbot, and it could have been the Talbot farm, and he went back to his farm because his dad had been missing and had a strained relationship with his dad, and he went back to try to help look for him, and they were at the cabin. You know, it didn't have to all be set in one night. Like, that was compression to make the film smaller. We could have let it breathe to know these characters. Like I said, you could have went into town. You could have done, if you didn't want to do the cane, could have had them looking in the shop, and there was a cane. You know, he could have had a medallion. He had a medal on at one point that was never addressed. A necklace could have been like a saint that he put over his daughter to protect her because she was scared. Um, if you don't want to do Romani people, you know, you could have had local tribal, because they mentioned tribes with the face of the wolf, um, you know, and done more of the Native American thing to kind of give it that. You could have done some shots of the moon to give it mystery. You know, if you hadn't done that card at the text at the beginning. And Brian and I both said we don't even think they ever had a title card unless it came later in the credits because we didn't watch all the credits. Um, and you could have just played into that a little bit more. And, you know, if you wanted to compress it, that everything happened on give us a full moon. You don't have to directly say it's because of the full moon, but enough that we can infer that maybe not, to give us that, you know, werewolf. But you know, that term's not even used. There's, uh, like I said, it's not really. It's just a virus, which is more like we've seen before. And I don't know. I just, even in Underworld, they kind of talk about it being like a virus that gets transmitted, but it feels more still folklorish and supernatural at the same time. And I'm saying and a lot, I know, because my brain is tired. It's early. But all in all, this is the most chopped up, segmented review ever because that's just how I think. I'm just not happy. I wanted a good wolf uh, man movie, and Face of the Wolf would have worked much better. The last thing I will say is if Winnell is this modern lens of these traditional classic monsters, it's not going to last. There's no iconic imagery or mood or anything with this. Like, this film will be forgotten and barely referenced. There's a reason those classic monster movies hold up and are classics. It, I just feel that this will just disappear.
there's nothing to latch onto. The image of the wolf man is not strong enough to carry on or to even market or use or anything. That nothing in this is worth really salvaging to make it universal and a big deal. There's been such a even from Universal, it's known for these character monsters. Last Voyage of the Demeter felt more like a. I asked Brian if it was if you make it a Nosferatu film than a Dracula film, is it any better? Because of the depiction of the vampire, it was weak. Could have been better. Renfield, I enjoyed, but still could have been better. And that tried to be an ode to classic Dracula, and that's Universal. So I don't really know what the quick fix is right now of how to properly manage those characters than other to honor and respect them. And everyone goes back to Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which everyone knows I'm not a huge fan of. But at least that went back to the book to try to actually do the book for the most part, even though it did the stupid love story. And I think that's the key with Dracula. Now we will be getting sometime soon the new Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein, and that'll be a new conversation. But where the Blumhouse right here with the Invisible Man worked because it was a different take and it was an interesting idea. But it would be like the Invisible Man to continue on, you know. This is in that same vein, but I don't really think it's what people really want, especially after all these years. I mean, think about it. The Invisible Man came out early 2020. This is now 2025.